Hi, I'm Kachadoorian with dblTildeCollaborative and on the eastern shore of the Chesapeake Bay in the United States.
I'm Trey, and I'm with Designing Bicycle User Experience and the Urban Cycling Institute. And today, Carol and I are going to talk to you about cycling through age. We're going to talk about a survey Carol's conducted that will give you a lot of insights into older adult cyclists in the US and their changing experiences and preferences. We are fitting into the theme of fast and slow social and cultural cycling changes within the symposium. And coming to the research questions, we realized that a lot of the people who cycled in college during the 1970s in the US are the US's today's older cyclists. And a distinction we should mention here is that we are giving a lot of information on people that are currently cycling today, which is distinct from a lot of the discussion which also often happens in cycling, which is about modal shift from people that don't cycle to making them cycle, which is an important theme. But the maintenance of existing people cycling is often forgotten, which we will return to in a second. Okay, so there was a technical thing here. Okay. So research questions. What do we know about these folks? What keeps them cycling? And what's the likelihood they will continue to cycle into their 70s, their 80s, their 90s? And the second one we looked at is what can help adults continue to cycle as they age? What are factors? What can we do? And again, this backdrop here is a point that Bruno Nikolaeva brought up, which is that we often forget about helping people continue to cycle from young into older age. Often people do cycle at some point, and instead by only focusing on converting people that don't cycle, we lose an opportunity. So we fit into this, we think this survey is relevant for this discussion. And the survey perhaps is also relevant for the theme of an inclusive cycling future. We really need to consider more deeply the needs and characteristics of a diverse group of users to have a more inclusive cycling future. And one case that's relevant for this is the case of older adults, which we go into here. And in order to do this, we really have to move past assumptions and take the first step, which is asking older adults about their own experiences. And in the 50+ cycling survey, Carol has done that with a lot of people. So Carol is now going to go into introducing the survey.
Thank you, Trey. So this is an image of the data book from the year 3 survey on the right, published by the Moneta Transportation Institute. We're talking about the results from that survey in our video today. If you want to take a look at the book, just capture that QR code and you can download it or look at it online. And I want to tell you a little bit about the survey. We had 2,300 responses last year. There are 3 parts of the survey. There were some limitations, which you can see: geography, distribution of age, race. Most of the folks that took the survey were white, but we did have a good representation of other races. COVID actually provided an opportunity for us to learn about older adults, many of whom continued to cycle, and in fact, cycled more during COVID. I also got a thank you for doing the survey. Oftentimes, we learn about older adults who cycle from surveys of all age groups. This is different because this survey specifically focused on people who are 50 and older. So there was an appreciation shown for that. So why is this important? We know that physical activity is important for people's well-being as they age. So we need to understand what motivates them to cycle today, what their changing needs are as people age, and then through both of those, identify barriers and obstacles so that people will continue to cycle as they age.
So in reporting back these results, we're going to keep these 3 things in mind. And then Carol's also going to report these back in terms of the 2 research questions we had. So the first one is, what do we know about older adults who currently cycle? So this is really going more into the characteristics and preferences.
Right. So first we'll talk about understanding what motivates cycling. You can see the list here: socialization, exercise and health, environmental stewardship, functionally for transport, and people cycle just because they love the sport. These are some of the things that people told us in the survey. For example, somebody said, "I'm old and alone and I wish to ride again." So you're welcome to pause and take a look at some of these quotes. There are 2 other slides that have these quotes, and you can see them then. We asked people if they cycled regularly. They could self-define what that meant. And you can see from the chart on the right that most people do cycle regularly. Even though it begins to dip in the 70s, everybody was at least 60% or above and even higher. And you can see the gender difference in the lower left-hand corner. So cycling regularly is important. And what do they cycle for? We asked about trip, purpose, and distance. I want to highlight 3 of these. In the blue, you can see that people cycled to be sociable and for companionship. They tended to cycle longer distances for that. In the gray, they cycled for exercise, the gray bars. And again, the exercise, the distance cycled tended to be longer. The yellow bars were for errands and for including shopping. And you can see that these distances tended to be shorter distances. Non-regular cyclists told us what motivated them to cycle. Sometimes it was simply as having the motivation, but the largest factor was having a safe place to cycle, as well as having bicycle facilities, and then as time allows as well. We asked people when they would stop cycling. They could select more than one answer, and almost 90% of the people said that they just can't envision a time when they would stop cycling. Again, the thumbnail in the lower left shows the breakout by gender, but people that cycle now want to continue to cycle. So part of that is addressing the changing needs as your body changes as you age. And so the survey provided us with information about near misses and crashes. We analyzed that. We also understood sort of what people expect from cycling, and also how what they told us about the desire to have everyday cycling, particularly where they live, be a factor that is important to them as they age. Again, there are some quotes. People like scenery. Hills are difficult for people. Easy gears are important. Changing bikes are important. So you can read these quotes at your leisure. And then going back to the chart of why would you stop cycling? About 40% of the people said if there was a physical condition that made it really impossible for them to cycle, they would. Some people, about 10% of the answers were overall loss of energy, but we know that there are ways to address that because remaining physically active is important as people age. We had about 540 descriptions of falls in the past year that people provided. I coded these into 27 factors and then grouped them into 6 categories. 3 of them I want to talk about now. Operator error: people were going too fast downhills, going too slow uphills, inattention. There were bike issues, such as they weren't on the bike that really fit them. They were on an e-bike and they didn't know how to use it. They had clips and couldn't unclip in time. And then there were age or skill-related factors. Some people said they have medical issues, which made it difficult to bicycle, and they fell as a result of that. I was intrigued by this couldn't unclip because of the number of responses for that. I found the highest age group that said they couldn't unclip in the 50s, and then that really went down beginning in the 70s. And so this is something that may need to change as people age, which we'll talk about when we get to the second research question.
Great, and we are basically there now. So Carol's talked a lot about what are the current cyclists like, and what are their characteristics and needs. And now she's going to report back on the second part, which is more about what we can do to help them continue to cycle as they age. And part of that is also addressing barriers.
So as you might expect, there's no one answer. The lack of good infrastructure in good condition is important. We heard a lot about the poor condition of infrastructure. Changing bikes as aging changes cycling. Mentioned clips. The image here is of a man that had neck issues, needed to get a recumbent, wanted to bike with his wife who was biking at a different speed, so they bought a recumbent tandem. Having affordable bikes is important. I'm guessing this tandem was expensive, but we also heard about the lack of affordability of bikes when people need to change bikes. And then because of the number of falls and near misses, better road sharing culture is really important as well. More quotes in terms of what people found when they like one person said they lost their balance. So take a look at these and you can see some of the changing needs that need to be addressed. Going back to that chart again, why would you stop cycling? People said if they moved to a place where the weather was crummy for cycling, or there were few or no safe places to cycle, that was a factor. So that means that we need to build, at least in the United States, more and better cycling facilities. Can't do much about the weather, although cycling might help with global climate change. Back to the description of falls, we're going to talk about surface condition and construction. We heard a lot about tires getting caught in cracks, slipping on gravel, puddles, mud. And so road maintenance, trail maintenance, cycling facility maintenance is highly important in order to have reduce the number of falls and keep people cycling. In terms of action of others, situational awareness, we heard about that a lot in the fall descriptions, not just for the cyclists, but for other cyclists, for motorists, for people walking and running. So public education, getting those messages out about sharing the road and being aware was really important. We know that I reported that cycling rates remain fairly constant, but as I've said, the expectation about cycling, what you want to get out of it, changes, and as that changes, you need to be aware of that. Somebody wrote, "I'm not in a hurry." They bought a new bike, and having this bike helps me be more leisurely. So maybe getting rid of those clips would be part of it as well. E-bikes are not the silver bullet. Even though you hear that, just get an e-bike. We asked people if they owned an e-bike. The rate was relatively low until people got into their 80s and actually their mid 80s. And it was the second highest. We asked people what would happen for them to buy an e-bike. And the second highest reason that people gave was they don't expect to get one. I think they feel that's a threshold they don't want to cross in terms of aging. Interestingly, or not so interestingly, crash rates for e-bike owners was about 8% higher than for non-e-bike owners. I know that's the experience in the Netherlands. So teaching people how to ride e-bikes, maybe talking to them about the right type of bike to get and not just getting e-bike is part of it. And bike shop owners can help with that as well.
All right, so to wrap up this second research question, which was what can help adults continue to cycle as they age, Carol has identified several factors. As some context, it is good to note that people do age differently and have different responses, but they do generally all want quality cycling facilities and do desire to continue cycling, she found. So Carol, can you quickly just
Sure.
list these?
So we've talked about these health. For good health, we need good facilities. They need to be connected to places where people want to cycle for shopping or exercise. Companionship is important. The right bike is important. That all feeds into a desire and motivation. And also recognizing how age changes your body, and maybe you need to change your expectation from cycling.
So some future questions we have that stemmed out of this are that we really addressed with this moving from middle age to older adult age. But what about moving from younger to middle-aged, or younger to child from to young adults? And additional questions we have are about, what can we practically do with these survey results? How can we advance these in the US and internationally, which is why we're talking here. And then what else do we miss that could be asked in future years? If you have any ideas or feedback, we have our contact information at the end. We'd love to hear from you. But first, we'll just summarize the contribution. So we hope you found this interesting to really get a look into a large, what may be the first large national US case study of older cyclists. Not just older cyclists, but several age groups within this, ranging from people around 50 to 80 and above. And we hope you're able to see now past the stereotypes and assumptions a bit and get a closer look into their world. We hope also this contributes more to the discussion on how we can design for older adults and show that there is no silver bullet for older adults, and that a more granular view is needed. So we also would like you to take a look, if this was interesting to you, to Carol's other presentation at the symposium, Cycling Uphill in the Headwind of Ageism. And we will try to link here if it's necessary, but it hopefully will be probably quite easy to find. And then also we recommend you look at the data book, again, if you are more curious about the results of the survey. Anything to add, Carol?
I think that's it. Thanks, Trey.
Yes, great. So here are references if it's interesting for you. And if you want to contact us, you can reach us via email here. Great.
Thank you.